For today's Business Matters, we're joined by Don Ma. Don, it's always great to see you. What's the word today in business?
Yeah, always great to see you as well, of course.
To see you, Don.
You guys. Let me get started right away. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is cementing itself in the AI revolution. Asia's most valuable company is the main producer of advanced chips used in artificial intelligence applications. A boom in AI demand is expected to have sent TSMC's third quarter profits soaring 40%. TSMC is scheduled to share quarterly earnings on Thursday. It's going to include an update on its outlook for the current quarter and the full year as well. Meanwhile, Britain said today that 4 U.S. tech firms will invest in UK data center technology. The combined investment will be $8.2 billion. And the announcement comes as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosts global business leaders at a major summit in London. Now, the Nobel Prize for Economics is shared by 3 people, 2 of whom wrote the best-selling book, Why Nations Fail. Their research concludes that democracy is better for prosperity in the long term. Here's more on that.
The Nobel Prize for Economics goes to 3 individuals, Darren Ashimoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson, for their research on factors that influence the development of prosperity. Ashimoglu and Robinson co-authored the best-selling book, Why Nations Fail.
Darren and Simon and I have been working for almost 30 years together, so it's sort of our life's work.
Winner James Robinson says the research is focused on the enormous differences between prosperous countries and poor countries.
Inclusive economic institutions have secure property rights and things that uphold something like equality of opportunity, a level playing field. So education, public infrastructure, the right kind of regulation are key.
Winner Darren Ashimoglu says democracy generally leads to prosperity, especially long term. Citizens can invest and start businesses without the government taking them away.
Yes, you can have episodes of growth under different arrangements, but if you want to sustain that growth over time, it's much stronger and much more robust if you can move towards the kind of inclusive participation.
Winner Simon Johnson says autocratic countries can grow quickly too, by mobilizing resources and directing them to existing sectors and firms. But this kind of growth is less sustainable long term and results in less innovation.
How do you provide evidence for that kind of claim? This is really difficult task.
Nobel Committee member Jan Toro explains they did this by researching European colonialism. They looked at how different colonies contained different numbers of Europeans by researching mortality rates.
The more settlers you had, the more you had to establish institutions that were good for investment. The fewer Europeans actually settled. And that meant that the Europeans either took over or established extractive institutions for the benefit of a narrow elite.
The winners acknowledge that China is growing rapidly, but say that it will have a harder time having long-term sustainable innovation outcomes.
Now, onto China. One of the country's economic bright spots is showing signs of dimming. Export growth slowed sharply last month to the slowest in 6 months. Now, let's talk about custom data here. It shows outbound shipments grew 2.4% year on year in September. And if you compare that to a nearly 9% rise in August, so a big difference here. The weak data does not bode well for exports, since about 1/3 of China's purchases are parts for re-export, particularly in the electronics sector, and manufacturers may be slashing prices to move inventory ahead of tariffs from several trade partners. The EU, US, and Canada have recently tightened trade measures against China. The European Commission earlier this month voted to impose additional tariffs on electric vehicles built in China. And dealerships have been slashing prices and maximizing incentives to get drivers to leave in a new electric vehicle. As a result, resale values for EVs have tumbled while values in the broader used car market have stayed steady. Car shopping website Edmunds found the average selling price of a 3-year-old EV last month was about $28,000. That's a 25% drop from last year and less than the cost to buy a comparable gas engine car. Dealerships and automakers are making new EVs more attractive with sales promotions as well as cheaper leases, low interest rate financing, and tax credits. Edmunds shows that EV leasing popularity has spiked from 16% of EV sales at dealerships last year to nearly 80%. And a car showdown in France. Chinese and European automakers went head-to-head at the Paris car show. Tensions are high with the EU's new import tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles as the car industry struggles with weak demand. European automakers are fighting to defend their home turf as Chinese rivals aim to get into the competitive market. Show organizers said 9 Chinese brands would unveil their latest models at the event. Both sides did find common ground over the dangers of EU tariffs. BYD told Reuters consumers would end up footing the extra costs, and Stellantis said this would lead to more Chinese factories in Europe, adding to overcapacity in the region. Now, another precious metal is gaining popularity from the rise in gold and silver. Retail interest in platinum has been growing. Costco recently added platinum bars to its precious metal selections, but experts are warning that selling physical bars of platinum may be tricky, even if the demand is there. Platinum demand outpaced supply last year, and that trend is expected to continue as supply is expected to stay level. Platinum is always mined together with other metals like palladium and rhodium, which are seeing weak demand. The bulk of platinum demand comes from the automotive industry for gas and hybrid cars, and that demand is expected to hold. Also, activist investment firm Elliott Management is taking its Southwest leadership fight to shareholders. Today, the hedge fund announced that it's called for an investor meeting in December, and this will be to vote on an overhaul of the airline's board. Elliott has been a vocal critic of CEO Bob Jordan, who has worked at Southwest for more than 3 decades. Jordan recently laid out the airline's plans to assign seats and offer premium seats, as well as pause growth and cut unprofitable, that is, routes. Elliott argues that management is the issue and outside leadership is needed. It has nominated 8 directors to replace current board members. Elliott has a roughly 10% stake in Southwest. So if you're not looking forward to the cooler months and wanted one more trip to the beach, then maybe you're in luck, because airfares to some of the world's most gorgeous beaches are now a lot cheaper. The flight comparison site Skyscanner recently released a travel trends report revealing the destinations with the biggest airfare drop from the US over the past year. The location that came out on top was the Mediterranean resort city of Nice. Fares to the city fell by 27% in the first half of the year compared to last year. Now, if you want to travel to a spot closer to the US, then head to Castries, St. Lucia, or Bridgetown, Barbados. Fares to those locations dropped by 25% and 24%, respectively. And the Columbus Day Parade yesterday in Seaside, New Jersey, impressed onlookers. NTD's Daniel Monahan has some highlights of the event, which was part of a weekend-long Italian festival.
It was the 33rd annual celebration of the event, which highlights Italian culture with a traditional street festival and a visit by dignitaries from Italy. The parade proceeded up the town boulevard, starting at 1 p.m. Parade and festival chairman Mike Blandina says it was a banner year.
Our best year ever because we had 3 days of great weather. We had traffic and people coming through, spectators all weekend long with the fabulous entertainment they do.
Congressman Chris Smith says it's amazing how much principled and highly dedicated people like Italian Americans have contributed to making America great.
What we're doing is celebrating the incredible contributions made by Italian Americans to the United States and these towns right here.
Smith says people can't forget their roots.
I think it's very important to remember, history is something that should be cherished, learned from.
Teacher Lynn Quinn has a nearby summer house.
It's exciting, it's community, and we all get together and we support.
Quinn says regardless of people's opinions about American history and Columbus Day, people are still Italian.
It's America. We're a melting pot. We have to accept everybody.
Retiree Maura Allen comes to the parade every year.
I love the bands, I love the parades, and I love the different cultures expressing their joy.
The former gym teacher says the parade is very important because Americans are losing their way.
It's okay to celebrate your culture, but let's all be Americans first.
Allen found the Falun Dafa floats that participated in the parade especially touching.
I love them. They're very beautiful, and I love their message. Compassion, tolerance, and kindness.
Rong Yi, the Falun Dafa waist drum team coordinator, discusses why their group came to the parade.
To spread Falun Dafa, truth, compassion, and tolerance to the community. Seaside, New Jersey, that we are very happy, very welcomed by the community.
Others shared their reactions.
I don't know anything about it, but I like the notion of kindness and peace and comfort.
Okay.
I just thought it was a beautiful...
And I brought my kids here. Last year I brought my grandkids here. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it today, but I think they should keep it going.
This year's parade grand marshal was Stephanie Mongello Waters, a former Superior Court judge in Ocean County. A folk group from Italy also performed at the event. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And quickly onto Wall Street, closed higher today. Both the S&P 500 and the Dow posted new record highs. Meanwhile, investors bought into technology stocks ahead of a weak packed with corporate earnings and crucial economic data. U.S. equities maintained the upward momentum from Friday, and that's when major banks kicked off the third quarter corporate earnings season on a positive note. So 41 S&P 500 companies expected to report results this week. And U.S.-listed shares of Chinese firms dropped, including Alibaba and PDD Holdings. Investors were left guessing at the size of the overall fiscal stimulus China announced on Saturday. And with that, everything happening on Business Matters today. Back to you guys, Carrie, Fiona.
Don, great to hear that flights are potentially dropping to some beach destinations. What do you make of that?
Yeah, 25%, 27%. I mean, that's pretty substantial savings right there. But me personally, I do enjoy the colder weather. So I don't know if it's worth it for me to go somewhere warmer. It's actually easier to protect yourself against the cold than to escape the heat for me.
Hey, well, I mean, hot or cold, Nice is a location that I'd be fine either way with visiting, so maybe I'll take advantage of it. Who knows?
Yeah, you should.
That's great. Yeah, well, we're looking to potentially get away over the holidays, so thanks for the tip there, Don. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
All right,
thank you, Don.
Thank you.